Hello everyone. The aim of this video is to give you a brief overview of what I'm expecting you to do for this week 2 of the module. So I will share my screen right now so we can have a look at what you have in store for this week. The aim and objectives for this week is for you to have a good overview of the topics that we'll be covering throughout the module. What you're going to be looking at this week is just an inkling of what is coming in subsequent, and we will explore it more in depth in subsequent weeks. You have this folder called Introduction to Environmental Chemistry or Introduction to Chemistry of the Environment, and you have the presentation I used during the videos and the lecture itself. And the lecture is separated in 3 different parts to make it a bit easier to follow. You might find part 3 particularly a little bit more challenging because there are quite a few graphs, and I discuss what you can or cannot see in the graphs, and if they're not familiar to you, it might look a little bit daunting. We will be looking at those graphs later on throughout the module, so I just wanted to introduce them right here so you start becoming familiar with the type of data, the type of graphs you look at when you are looking at environmental issues related to environmental chemistry. Finally, I'm asking you to read chapter 1 of Principles of Environmental Chemistry by Roy Harrison. It's an online book. It's accessible through the Noble database. Hopefully, at this point, you're already registered with the Noble database. If not, please do. You will need to use your your Canterbury Christchurch email, and it's packed with resources related to chemistry, which I find very useful. And I will be directing you to chapters and other resources from the Noble database later on throughout the module. So please do make sure that you sign up. Once you have finished this, the next step is to look at typical concentration units in environmental chemistry. This is the recording and the presentation I used it in the recording, and in this recording I talk through typical units of concentration that we will encounter when we're working in environmental chemistry, when we're working with environmental samples. Please, I will really encourage you to repeat the calculations for sulfur dioxide as I say in the video, to engage in the task that I set to you in the video, and do post in the chat or email me if you're having trouble with this calculation and you would like me to pick this up and do this example or more examples in one of the synchronous online sessions in Collaborate we will have in the future. You also have the data for the Hambrook Marshes Virtual Practical. And this is one of the practicals you can choose to write your scientific paper about. Whether you choose it or not for your scientific paper, I would expect you to still engage with the material and explore the content I'm giving you. But obviously, if you're going to choose it as your scientific paper, I would expect you to revisit this and explore it more in depth. You've got a link to the website to Hambrook Marshes, so you can have an idea of where it is. It's in Canterbury, near the Winship Industrial Estate, so you can visit it if you happen to be in Canterbury, but if you cannot visit it, you can still have a little website and see and get some general information about the area. I'm also giving you the practical schedule for this field trip, the type of measurements that were taken and how they were measured. Phosphates, nitrates, pH, dissolved oxygen, and conductivity, and also the temperature of the water in 4 sampling sites. And finally, I'm giving you the data, all that data for those abiotic factors. And also in the Excel file, you will find links to Google Maps. So you can have a look, even if you cannot visit the area, you will be able to use the street view to see the area where those samples were taken. So I'm expecting you to look at the data on the Hamburg Marshes website and then explore what the data means. The aim for this section is to assess the water quality in Hamburg Marshes with respect to the factors measured, the ones you have in the Excel file. So I would expect you to look at data on what are appropriate pH levels, dissolved oxygen levels, conductivity levels, nitrogen and phosphate levels that makes our water ecosystem healthy. And how much you will explore that point will depend on if you end up writing a paper about it, the assessment about it. But even if you are not writing the paper, please do look at the data and please assess whether you think that the water quality of Hamburg Marshes with respect to the parameters studied is good or not. You've got a link to a 42 pages draft of a research paper published in 2010. The paper itself in applied geochemistry is not freely available, but the draft is in a repository. And it gives you a very good idea of how to write a research paper on water analysis, because the two practicals you can choose from to write a scientific paper, if you are part of the ecology group, the flame photometer practical, and for everybody else, the Hamburg Marshes practical, virtual field trip, they're all related to water analysis. So it is very useful background reading to get an idea what sort of things you discuss when you're writing a paper on water analysis. It might be particularly useful for those of you that are choosing the flame photometer practical. If you're one of the ecology students and you have done that practical, and you will do this practical in the lab next week, and you might want to choose it for your scientific paper. Just be mindful if you are using whichever your scientific paper is, if you're using this paper as one of your potential references. It's a paper from 2010. Some of the legal limits it mentions, some of the 10 years have passed. Be mindful that when you are quoting legislation or legal limits on various pollutants, those might not be the most up-to-date levels. That information might have been superseded by new information. So always try to first, find the most recent article to get information if you are quoting, especially if you're quoting legal limits. Partition coefficients in the pharmaceutical industry. If you are a student doing the ecology program, then this is one of the practicals you will be doing. You will be measuring partition coefficients in the lab. So I've included this for information because it might help you the following week, next week, when you are doing the practical. It's a link to an ebook available through the library website. And I'm directing you to 5 or 6 pages, which specifically talks about partition coefficients in the pharmaceutical industry. If you're not an ecology student, this is not the practicals you're going to be doing. So don't worry about this resource, unless you're curious about what it's about. I will link again to this specific resource when we are studying partition coefficients in a few weeks' time. So I will revisit this resource because it's a good example of the use of partition coefficients that are both very important in the environment, in environmental measurements, and they're also very important in the pharmaceutical chemistry. And finally, there is a link to the discussion board for the week. So please do post your comments and questions there. I will stop sharing now. We'll go back to my screen. So the discussion board, please feel free to email me. I really, really encourage you to drop me an email and ask any questions about the module or the content or the structure of the module. However, if you feel, I would really encourage you to discussion board. And that is because if we post the discussion board, if we all post in the discussion boards questions, comments on the materials, whether you have had trouble accessing a particular resource that I'm asking you to find, and I'm telling you you have access to, and you find that you don't have access. Interesting resources you might find when you are doing your own research around the subject in the time that I'm not structuring in your learning. All that, you're very welcome to email me, and but if you post it in a discussion board, we can always learn. We can all learn from it, and other students might be able to contribute with their own experience of how to solve that problem, or with similar resources that they have also found useful. So together we can find, we can really create a community of useful resources and useful information, which is available to all of us. So that's all for this video. I hope it was useful, and thank you very much for watching. Enjoy your week.